So as you can see, this is the first live session. We will talk you through how the programme works a wee bit later on in the session. For those of you who joined earlier, you'll see that Jacqueline had put a link in the chat to an e-forum, and there's a QR code there on the slide as well. It would really help us if you could complete that. It just gives us some really important information, which is really, really helpful. So if you can take time, it's only 9 questions, but if you can take some time just to complete that, we would be really grateful. We will do some introductions a wee bit later on, but for just now, I think we'll just move on to the next slide, Jacqueline, if that's okay. Great. So as I said, we'll go over some of the details a wee bit later on about what the sessions are and how you can access some of the content. But before we do, we just need to go over a few accessibility options and different things with you before we officially get started. So each session will be recorded, and that's so that we can allow other practitioners who have been unable to join us tonight a way to access the training as part of our Anytime Learning offer, but it also gives you the option to revisit some of the points in your own time. We always want to ensure that our sessions are as inclusive and accessible as possible, and as you can see from the slide, Teams has got some useful accessibility options. So for example, live captions, that allows you to see what others are saying, ensuring that everybody who's here can follow the presentation. This is really helpful if you're maybe in a loud environment, because you should still be able to follow what's been said. You can also expand the presentation view to full screen, which will hide the title bar and the taskbar, and that would allow you just to focus 100% on the presentation. And if at any point you, for whatever reason, lose the slides and you can't hear or see the presentation, it's always better to leave and try and reconnect. It normally does provide the fix needed. I have no technical expertise to explain that, but actually practice and experience has told us that it actually seems to work, so give that a go if for any reason you have any difficulties. We're just going to start tonight's session with a wee bit of a connected activity. So what we thought would be nice, if you look at the many Marley poses, so this is Marley, and if you look at the many Marley poses and think about which one reflects your current mood, so which one really resonates with you, and if you can put the number into the chat pane and maybe tell us why that particular one resonated with you, that would be really helpful. I'm going to start off by saying that I'm probably number 1, and that's just because I feel quite tired today after a long weekend. I wasn't particularly busy, but I probably tried to cram too much into the weekend, into a few days. I'm also feeling the cold a little bit, but I'm still reluctant to put the heating on, so I do normally have a blankie or a throw quite close by. Quite a few people saying 1, some saying 6 as well, that's good. Oh dear. I'm seeing a few 4s come in, a bit of a crazy day for the first day back for most people. Love it, number 5 on the sofa, just ready to learn. Great stuff. Oh, crazy day back. We all have days like that, I suppose. That's good. No, thank you for everyone. So that was just a wee way to sort of do a bit of an icebreaker and get us all started. And I'm feeling quite tired as well. I'm seeing there's lots of number 1s coming in there. Great. So we'll move on. So we appreciate that we will be providing a lot of information. And if you would like to ask a question or share your thoughts, you can either post it directly into the chat pane, but you can also post it anonymously on the car park. I'm just going to pop into the... Oh, somebody's done that. See, this team, they're so efficient. I was so prepared and Jacqueline has beat me to it. So you'll see there's a link to the car park. Jacqueline has just posted it into the chat pane there. And basically what that does, it would allow you then anonymously to post any questions or any thoughts that you might have. And we might not get to them tonight, but what we will do as a team is we'll debrief and we'll gather some of the common questions together, and we'll either try to capture that at the start of the next live session, or we can maybe put a comment on the Padlet as we have a response. We would encourage you to keep a note of any of your own considerations or comments or questions which arise either during tonight's session or after this session, and maybe add those to the car park. We want these sessions to be really helpful to you, and we will hope to try and work with you to address any concerns that you might have and work with you to support you just in whatever way we can. You'll also see and you'll get access to our email address, And again, use that if you've got any questions in between sessions, and we will try our best to get back to you and help support you with that. We will try and pause as we go through the session tonight, and if I'm speaking, one of my colleagues will maybe pick up any questions that come in. So we'll try and do that during the session, but alternatively we've got the car park there that we can check in with. That's great. So in this session, we will go over briefly the aims of the programme. We'll share how the programme works, how you can access everything that you should need to get you through this sort of programme. We will look briefly at the key guidance in relation to numeracy and maths, and also talk briefly today about some of the key approaches that we would recommend that you use. Finally, we'll also provide you with some practical links to take away with you so that right away you could start to implement some of these in your practice from tomorrow, and hopefully that will support your own learning and teaching, which is exactly what we look for when we come to some professional learning sessions. I think we'll also stop halfway through, or round about halfway through, for a bit of a screen break as well, just so that you can stretch your legs or have a wee bit of a rest from the screen. Next slide, Jacqueline, please. Thank you. So the reason that we decided to offer these sessions were really based on a few things. So firstly, the feedback from sessions we provided last year was particularly positive from those who were in their first few years of teaching. And secondly, that we know that the last few years have been particularly unusual, and not everyone will have had the same opportunities to develop their understanding, their confidence and their experience in relation to numeracy and maths. So these sessions are intended to be a safe space to explore effective approaches to learning, teaching and assessment within numeracy and maths, and give you a chance to reflect on your own practice and strengthen what you do in the classroom. We appreciate that some of you might have just started, and I can see that from the chat pane. Some people are just at the beginning of their journey, some maybe a wee bit further on. And because of that, we know there'll be a varied level of classroom experience, but we want each of you to take something from these sessions. So please interact and ask questions and engage as much as you possibly can. The sessions are based on the National Model for Professional Learning. And the national model for professional learning is based on best evidence around what makes effective professional learning, and that professional learning that has the best impact on outcomes, not only for the teacher but also for the children and the young people that you work with. I'll post a link to the national model of professional learning just in a second when I've finished speaking, just so that you've got access to that if it's something that you're not familiar with. Just next slide, Jacqueline, please. Thank you. So as a team, when we embark on any professional learning offer, we consider 4 significant drivers of change. The original Make and Maths Count report, which was 2016, led to the Maths and Numeracy thematic report. In addition, the refreshed curriculum narrative, which was published in September 2019, provided us with new clarity and direction. And finally, we're still realising some of the problems, I suppose, that were associated with our COVID world and the focus on recovery. And we know that there has been early evidence that the attainment gap may have increased for our most disadvantaged children, but this may also be the case for other groups of children who have become vulnerable learners as a result of the pandemic. On the next slide, thanks Jacqueline. On the next slide you will see the 4 capacities. Scotland's curriculum places learners at the heart of education, and at its centre are 4 fundamental capacities. These capacities reflect and recognise the lifelong nature of education and learning. They recognise the need for all children and young people to know themselves as individuals and to develop their relationship with others, in families and in communities. They recognise the knowledge, the skills and attributes that children and young people need to acquire to thrive in our interconnected digital and rapidly changing world. And they enable children and young people to be democratic citizens and active shapers of the world. And you'll see in the example provided on the slide just now what this might look like from a numeracy and maths perspective. So before we start, just moving into a bit more about the sessions themselves, we thought we would just briefly introduce the team. So my name's Maria, and Jacqueline, Yvonne and I make up part of the Education Scotland's Numeracy and Mathematics team. We are all from a primary or early years background. We also have 2 secondary colleagues who complement our team, so we have Nanette and Iona, And we also have a senior, John Neeson, who's recently joined the team. And you'll see that on the screen there, we mentioned Regional Improvement Collaboratives, or RICs. And again, for those of you who are maybe just new, just in your first year, you might hear that word being mentioned quite a lot. And just to give a wee bit of a background of where that comes from, in 2017, the Scottish Government announced plans to get local authorities to cooperate more closely. So the councils of the local authorities were organised into Regional Improvement Collaboratives, or RICs, as they're often known. So there are 6 RICs, which you can see outlined on the map on the slide at the moment. And the RICs were formed with the purpose of improving education and closing the poverty-related attainment gap. The intention is that they will do this by working together to give advice and support to schools and to share examples of good practice across the local authority borders. Each collaborative published a regional improvement plan, and that plan set out the visions and aims of the collaborative. And Education Scotland staff and the structure within that was adapted to complement the RICs so that we could work alongside the RICs to support them implement their plans and priorities. So you'll see on the slide that's in front of you just now which RIC your local authority belongs to. So for example, if you're here from Falkirk, you belong to the Forth Valley and West Lothian Collaborative. If you're from Angus, you belong to the Tayside Collaborative. So this is a worthwhile wee document just to keep handy if you're a wee bit unsure about where your local authority fits in that regional improvement collaborative structure. I'm going to pass over to Jacqueline just now.
It's me. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, Yvonne.
Yeah, not at all. So what we're going to do, we are just going to pause for a little moment and ask you to complete a Menti activity. Now, if you are not familiar with Menti, if you have got a second device, like a phone or a tablet, you can just go to menti.com and it'll ask you to type in a code, or you can click the link that Jacqueline has added into the chat and that will open in another window for you. You'll see that there are 2 questions that come up on the screen, and it asks you to give a rating from 1, which means never, up to 5, which means always. So we will give you a moment. The other thing that you can also do is scan the QR code that's on the screen, and that will take you to the page. So we'll give you a wee moment there and just have a think about those 2 questions there and your personal rating for them. That's great. I can see 124 people so far have submitted, and we can see that most people are saying kind of a 3.5 between how much they enjoyed maths when they were at school and people feeling slightly less in terms of their kind of thinking about their confidence and how comfortable they are when planning maths lessons. So interesting for us to kind of pause and just kind of reflect on where we are in terms of our feeling. And I think that's something that we thought it was important to highlight at the start of these sessions, is that actually everybody on this call is starting their numeracy journey from a different point. So for some of you, you are brand new to the profession. You're a couple of weeks into your first year, or you're in your final year at university. For other people on the call, you are joining us from your kind of 3rd, 4th, 5th year of teaching. We also know that we've got some colleagues who have decided to join up because they are returning to teaching after a career break, or they've maybe very recently moved to a new stage within the school, and so they're maybe just looking for a bit of a refresher with the course. So you are all starting at different points on this numeracy improvement journey, and you're all coming with different experiences that have brought you to the kind of place that you're at. And as Maria said, some of you have had quite a disruptive previous experience in terms of maybe some of your placements and things like that if they were fallen during COVID. So we know that things like the classes that you've taught, things that you've seen in other schools, the needs that are in your current class, these will all be influencing how you feel with regards to numeracy at the moment. Some of you, you're going to be in schools where you're going to have a strong focus on numeracy and maths. So it's maybe part of your school improvement plan. You might have several members of staff from your school joining these sessions. For others, you're going to be the only one in your school who is part of this, and you'll be taking it forward more of as a kind of personal journey. We also know that each school and each local authority is different. So again, some of you will have had opportunities within your own local authorities to attend training that's been specifically run. For others, you're maybe in an authority who doesn't have any central numeracy training, and so this is kind of part of what's making up your core professional learning for numeracy. We also know that depending on where you are based local authority wise, some of you might be working from a set progression pathway and a numeracy strategy that all schools in that council will be expected to follow. Whereas in others, it might be up to your school what you're using in terms of planning and progression, and some of you may have the flexibility within your own class of what to use. And again, it's worth bearing that in mind as we go through the sessions, that different people are at different stages. One of the questions that we often get asked is, why don't we run these sessions for each level? So why don't we run introductory sessions for early level, for second level, and that kind of thing? We have considered it as a team, but apart from the fact that we would need to try and timetable in multiple sessions with our very small team, we also think it's important that you have an idea of the progression of numeracy and math skills. So at the moment, you might be in primary one and your focus is very much on early level this year, but that's unlikely to be the case for your entire teaching career. Similarly, you might be in primary 7 and you have a spread of learners who are working right the way from early through to second level. We also know that some of the colleagues on the call are working across multiple stages in composite schools or composite classes, and so it wouldn't be fair to expect them to attend multiple sessions, which is why we have laid the sessions out with an overview across early to second level. So wherever you are in your journey, we hope that these sessions will help you to reflect on your current numeracy and maths teaching and give you ideas, strategies and resources that you can take away and use as you're on your teaching career. It's important to be mindful that not everything that you hear about will be useful for you at the moment, but we hope that they are things that you can put into your teacher toolbox for later in the school year, or maybe even a few years from now. So don't feel like you need to be doing everything all at once. We want you to be able to adapt and to use the bank of ideas to make them suitable and appropriate for you and your learners wherever you are on your journey. We also thought it was important just to highlight here that schools are very different in terms of what they use. So again, you might be in a school who is using a particular progression. You may have a focus on a particular approach in terms of a pedagogical approach, or in terms of maybe something that the school has bought in with the likes of their PEF spending. But what we want to know is, how can you use what is already in your school and help to increase and adapt those to make it relevant for the learners that you're working with. So we're really trying to support effective approaches to learning, teaching and assessment. And so for that reason, you'll never hear us promoting one particular approach. A lot of these that you see on the screen are tied into commercial products, and because we are part of a government agency, we are not in a position to say that this is better than this, or we recommend that local authorities buy this. And that's why our aim is to spark lots of different ideas across the different topics that we cover, with that idea of improving learning and teaching in numeracy and maths, helping to raise your confidence levels in delivering it, and then also helping to improve learners' confidence in turn. So we know that from last year, the feedback was very positive in terms of how it helped to support learners, and we hope that that will be the case for yourselves on the journey with us this year. So I'm now going to pass over to Jacqueline, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about the programme and how this will work.
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. So this programme, as you probably know from all the communication that has come out, has 3 live webinar dates. Tonight is obviously the first one, and it's an introduction to teaching numeracy and maths. The second one in January will focus on problem solving and developing a problem solving approach. And then the final session will take place in May, and that content will be decided based on what you want, and we'll give you lots of opportunity throughout the programme to make suggestions of what you would like, because it needs to be adapted to what is useful for you and not what we think is useful for you. The self-led learning aspect of the course can be accessed through this thing link, which I'll show you, I'll give you a live tour of in just a moment or two. And within that, there are 9 modules. And what I'll do is I'll just actually bring that into the screen just now. Okay, so this is the thing link. We'll give you the link to that at the end. I was going to give you it now and I thought, nope, because you'll be distracted and you'll click on it and play about with it. And I say that because I know that's what I would do. But what we'll do is we'll give you that at the end so that you can access that straight away after this session. I have been kind of answering in the chat as well, and so have my colleagues. You will get a copy of the slides. You'll get a copy of the recording of this as well. It might take us a wee bit longer than normal because it's a Scottish Learning Festival this week, and Ian that records all the sessions for us is mega busy this week. So as soon as we've got the recording, we'll send you everything out. So all the email addresses that I have that from everybody that signed up, they will all get a copy of this. If you're joining us today with a link that somebody shared with you, we're fine with that. We don't mind you joining us. We're happy to have you on. But what I would say is I'll give you a form at the end, and Yvonne and Maria, let me remind me to do that, where you can actually sign up so that we've got your email address and we can email you everything. So you'll get a welcome pack, links to this, links to the recording and links to the slide. So that'll all come out hopefully within a week. If not, just bear with us. It'll be just a wee bit longer than that. But you can work on this straight away, this thing link. So this is the self-directed learning. We've just a little bit of information on how it works, but I'm going to talk you through that anyway. Once we receive the link to this recording, you'll just click on this here and it will take you, I've put there at the moment link to be added, but there'll be a actual hyperlink that will take you to the recording there, and then the other 2 will be added as we go through them as well. We've got a link here just to our email address if you want to email us anything, and then we've got links. These further links here take you to the experience and outcomes, they take you to resources and further professional learning that we think might be useful, and links to a lot of the things that we talk about in the session today. The right hand side of this thing link is where we host the modules. So as I said, you can see there's 9. We're only going to make 3 of them live at the moment. So you can see these top 3 have little green stars. That means that they're live. The next 3 will be released on the 1st of December. And then the final 3 will be released on the 1st of February. We just did this because we didn't want to overwhelm people with too much. There's plenty within those first 3 modules to get to work through. But also what I want to be clear of is you don't need to do all 9 because we know how busy your lives are. We know how difficult it is to fit things in. What we've tried to do is design this to be as flexible as possible so that you can dip in and out of it whenever you've got time to do whatever you can. And you don't need to do all of the modules. You can pick which ones suit you. You can work through bits of them. You can do whatever suits you. And all you need to do is click on. So if I'll go to the number processes 1, 2 as an example, every single module looks like this. The theme will be different. So in this case, it's number processes, but you can see we've got time and data and analysis and so on as well. So in every module, there is a series of videos. This one has 5. Not all of them have 5. Some only have 3. It just depends on what the content is. Each video is probably between 4 to 20 minutes long. We've broken them up. You don't need to watch them all at once. You can go in and watch whatever you want to watch whenever suits you. So what we ask is that you watch the videos. We do recommend that you watch all of the videos to get the full picture, and then we recommend that you complete these reflective questions. What we're suggesting is that you start a journal or a diary or some sort of workbook or something, just to kind of document your own journey through this. Note down any questions you've got, note down things that you want to try. We're not going to take it in. It's not for us. It's not for us to look at. It's purely for you so that you can note down things as you go along. So you will watch the videos, complete the reflective questions, and then carry out the tasks. The tasks are essentially the same in most of the modules. It's basically pick something from the module that you'd like to try it, and reflect on that approach. That's all we're looking for you to do there. And again, it's your own reflection. We're not going to come and chase you up and check that you've done this. So that's the core element of each module. We also have some follow-up learning, and it's usually some follow-up reading or some further professional learning that links into that theme. So all of these link into the number processes. And then we have some resources as well that link to that theme. So you can see we've got some actual resources that might help you with your teaching of that as well. So that's what each module looks like. At any point you can go, there's a little home button here, you can click on that and it will take you back to the main board there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a moment just to take that in, and if you've got any questions about that, stick them into the chat, and again we'll try and answer them just now, but if not, we can take a note of those questions, we'll go through them and we'll email out the answer to people as well. So take a wee moment, just think about what you've seen, and if you've got any questions. Hopefully it's quite easy to use, but you know, we think that you might not, so we'll see how it goes. I'm just kind of looking at the chat there, but I think Yvonne, you've covered it anyway.
Yes, just a couple of people asking, is it the same as last year?
Yes, I mean, it's pretty similar. We have updated it. Instead of the recordings from last session, we've re-recorded them, broken them into chunks, but the content is essentially the same. Are we permitted to access certain modules if they're relevant to what's going on? We weren't going to make them live. If somebody's got a desperate need, if they're wanting to do something, then email us and we can possibly release it. A couple of them have still to be finalised, so that would be where the issue would be in that, but all of them are almost finished anyway. This has been our joyful summer, and I actually mean that when I say joyful, because we have enjoyed creating all of these. So if we've got it available and you're desperate for us, let us know and we'll see what we can do. All stages of CFE, primary, early, first and second. Yeah, they go from early level through to second level. And they are progressive. What I should actually say is that's a good point. In some of the videos, it kind of works at the beginning videos are early and then it moves into first and second in some of the modules, but not all of them are like that, because some of them, actually what we've done is we've covered themes. So when it comes to money, we've looked at use of coins, introduction to coins, then we've looked at calculations using money, and we've kind of gone through the progression of each theme within that topic. So you just need to look at it and judge what you think is right for you. But as Yvonne said earlier, it is really important to see what comes before and what comes after what you're teaching where you can, because it helps you build that picture, particularly if you are at second level or first, because the likelihood is that you'll have learners who are on an early or first as well. Accessing the modules, I'll send you, we'll put the link in the chat at the end of this. I'm not putting it in now in case it distracts you. So we'll send that in. That means that you can have a look at that from the end of this session. You'll be able to access it, but it will also be included in the welcome pack. But what I would suggest doing is save it to your favourites as well, so that you're not having to kind of fitter about and try and find it again. Any other questions that we've missed?
Just that one around, is there a time limit on the thing link?
No, we're going to keep these live. Well, I mean, at least 2 years we'll keep them live. And if we're not able to, because for various reasons, we'll do something that you're able to access as well, because we know that not all of this is achievable for 1 year for people. So take your time, do what is suitable for you at your pace, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure you've got access to it next year as well. I think that's okay for now. If anything comes to you, stick it in the chat. We'll try and address it. And also, you can also email us at any point. You've got access to the email, or you can stick it in the Padlet, whatever is easiest for you. It might seem that you've got lots of ways of contacting us, but the reason we've done it that way is because different people prefer to contact us in different ways. And we just want people to feel as comfortable as possible within this, because we do appreciate there's lots of other things going on in your life as well.
Jacqueline, so there's a couple of questions that have come into the car park.
Yeah.
One about how will we be able to access the Padlet if you're not on a training session. So as Jacqueline said, you'll be able to get a link to that, so you can just save it to your favourites. And yeah, everything is explained in the welcome pack. So 1 or 2 people are just still joining the call. So if you've missed anything, don't worry, you'll be able to watch the recording back and get everything within the welcome pack.
Yeah, I mean, the welcome pack is a step-by-step guide. So even, there is a lot of information coming out today and you think, right, I got that bit, but I've missed that. But everything is in there, step-by-step guide on how to access everything. So hopefully that'll be enough. And if not, you know how to contact us and it's fine. The car park itself as well, with all the questions, now that you've got that link permanently. And again, we will send it out, but it's there. So as everyone says, save that to your favourites along with the thing link as well. And what I'll do is I'll just move on just now, and if anybody's got any more questions, you can stick them in the chat later as well. We're also going to have 3 optional drop-in sessions, but I'm going to talk about them at the end, but it's just so that you know that there's going to be that extra support available as well. I see the question there about sharing it with colleagues, or is it for people in the course? Yeah, I mean, we're happy for you to share it. We would prefer, if possible, if they signed up as well. And I'll give you a link for people to sign up in just a moment or two, because it means that they'll get access to everything as well. And it just helps us keep a kind of record of how many people are accessing it as well. But there's, to be honest, there isn't really anything stopping you from sending that out, because it's an open link as well. All links will be sent out, but after, not just now. Okay, next thing. Part of this webinar was to focus on the key documentation and the areas of support that are available within Numeracy and Maths. And what we've got is we've got one page on the National Improvement Hub that links to all of the key documents and publications that you need. So you can access it by clicking on this link, can't get the words out, this link. And as we said, you'll get a copy of the slides and you'll be able to click in all of the live links whenever you want to later on. We're not going to look at all of the documents within that in each detail, but we just wanted to highlight a couple of them for you today as well. And the first one that we want to highlight is the experiences and outcomes alongside the benchmarks as well. Pretty sure you'll know what these are already, but we kind of felt we couldn't not mention them, seeing as they are the core of everything that we do. We did also want to highlight that there are milestones documents as well for those of you who might be working with learners with complex additional needs, and all of these can be accessed through that link. This link here as well. These documents, 2 years ago we published a package of professional learning resources, and you can see from this slide what the key themes are. Some of them fit quite nicely into some of the themes coming up for our module as well. And alongside these documents there's a guidance document and a glossary that supports them as well. They are really easy to read, and they go from early level right through to 4th level. And they look at effective approaches to learning and teaching within each of these areas. And again, we wouldn't expect you to read all of them at once, but if you know that you're planning on teaching one of these themes soon, for example, money, then you could start with that one. They're not linear or anything like that. You know, you don't need to read one before the other. You can pick up the theme that you're wanting to pick up and have a look at that. So they can be found in the National Improvement Hub. Actually, I've just realised that I've not got the link on the slide for that. So I'm just going to copy the link and put that in the chat just now. And that's how you can access all of them. They are linked to, I should actually say, on the number in each module. So if it's number processes or money or whatever, we do have a link to the professional learning resource that links into that as well. So there's different ways you'll be able to access things. Last year, we published a set of sketch notes, and these were linked to the number processes document. And we've got one for early, first, and one for second level as well. So one for early, one for first, one for second. These are a visual representation of the key messages within the professional learning resource, and it looks really at the kind of key learning and teaching approaches. They are really worth looking at, and it's worth looking at them a few times as well, because even at myself, I find that every time I looked at it, I noticed something different about it as well. And these specific sketch notes you can access through the link here, but also you can access, we've linked to them on the number processes module as well. I'm just looking at that, able to join because a colleague couldn't attend. Okay, right, I'll look into that at the end then as well. There's always teething problems. We had several hundred people register, so we always end up with a few teething problems. So the fact that we've got 192 on the call, that's a good sign at the moment anyway. And thank you to those who were sharing it with those that didn't get the link. Okay, we're going to have a quick screen break, which I'm sure you're more than ready for at the moment. We have given you quite a lot of information. We are going to come on to a bit more interactive, fun, exciting things in a minute as well. But what we'll do is we'll give you 5 minutes in a moment just that you can move away from your computer, you can stretch your muscles, or you can sit at your computer if you want, whatever you want to do. We're going to leave these tasks on the screen here, And what we would say is you can pick one of them, you can pick all of them, you can do whatever you want, and just note down as many different things as you can. You can put them in the chat, you can write them on a piece of paper in front of you, or you can just think about them, whatever you would prefer. If you are putting it in the chat, I would suggest that you put the letter first so that we can see which one it's linking into, so that it makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So that's 4:35. We'll come back at 4:40 and take the time to do whatever suits you best in the next 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. Again, if you just complete that, it's very quick. It's name, local authority, email address, and that way I'll make sure that you're added to the list, and I'll cross-reference everything to make sure, and that means that it just means that you will get access to all the material. If you have also been given a link from a friend or a colleague and you haven't registered, you can complete that as well, and that'll make sure that you're on it. More than welcome to share that. If you've got colleagues that think, oh, I'd quite like to be part of that programme, you can share the forms link with them and they can join, and we'll keep adding people in to the distribution list. So yeah, apologies. You will always have some teething problems. So if that's the worst, then at least you're all here and you can share it. And as I said earlier, everything, the whole thing will be sent out later on as well. So you'll get access to absolutely everything. And at that, I'm going to stop talking, and Yvonne, I'll pass to you.
That's great, thank you very much. So we don't have time to look at all of the activities that are on the screen here, but if I just focus on that box C there, there's lots of things that yourselves, or if you were using it with learners, that your learners might have said. So they might have said something like, it's a cuboid, it's got 6 faces, it's got 12 edges, it's got 8 vertices, 2 of the faces are squares, that kind of thing. So each of the tasks that are on the screen are open-ended and they can have lots of different solutions. These types of tasks are really great for differentiation because all of your learners would be able to access it at a level that is appropriate to where they are in their own learning. And they're also good for encouraging engagement, because learners are encouraged to think a bit more deeply about, well, what else do they know? What else could they tell you? On the next slide, you will see some of the things that we've picked out. We didn't want to jump right into the nitty-gritty of how to teach addition and subtraction and multiplication and division without thinking about the type of classroom ethos that we have and that we're trying to establish with our learners. A lot of children can find maths really challenging, and we know that there's a lot of research on at the moment around maths anxiety, and that children can start school and their ELC settings already beginning to show that they have elements of maths anxiety. So actually it's really important, before you actually think about what you're teaching, thinking about how are you teaching it, and actually what steps within your own setting, so within your own classroom or within your own ELC setting, what can you do to help to address this? And taking that moment to think about, what does maths look like, sound like and feel like within your own setting? So you'll see from some of the things on the slide, things like modelling and discussing strategies, so that learners understand that, you know, maths is not always about getting one right answer. Actually, there are lots of different answers and lots of different ways that we can get to that answer. And actually that can help to encourage learners' curiosity, to help them ask questions and to help that mathematical discussion. We also know that using open-ended questions is a really good way to help learners explore their own ideas within maths, and you'll hear us using these terms quite a lot in the videos and in the live sessions, that I wonder and I notice and what if questions. And it's also really important that we talk about maths in a positive way. So we're encouraging that positive mindset ourselves, and we're celebrating mistakes And you might find that you yourself may suffer from a little bit of maths anxiety. We know that from the Menti earlier on, not everybody enjoyed maths at school, and that's okay, but it's just making sure that in your interactions with learners, you are speaking positively about maths and helping them to see that even though they might find elements of it challenging, that it's okay to feel like that, and that maths is important for everybody. We also know that sometimes the misconceptions that children have can come down to the language that we use. And sometimes when we use language ineffectively, we can actually be the ones that are causing the misconceptions. And so if you think about some of the words that we use, there are some very technical mathematical language that we expect quite young children to be able to use. So things like factor, prime, trapezium, denominator. So it's really important that we take time to actually introduce the vocabulary and explain the meanings clearly, rather than have that expectation that children will already know what these words mean. And also, if you think about some of the words that we link to numeracy and maths, so words like take away, match, sum, face, table, when you think of a table, do you automatically picture a mathematical table, or are you thinking about your kitchen table? When you hear me say take away, are you thinking about subtraction, or are you thinking about the pizza that you ate over the weekend? And that's the same for our learners as well, that actually when they hear these words, they're not automatically making the correlation with maths. And so it's really important that we spend time actually modelling these words and explaining what they mean. Now on the screen you'll see here are some of the words that we hear, the kind of most common misconceptions being used. So we hear people talking about a number, a numeral and a digit. And it's important that we are clear with learners what the difference is. So a digit being 0 to 9. A numeral being the way that it is written, so the actual formation of a number. And when we talk about number, that can be a number that is written down on a bit of paper, but it can also be a number that is part of a number line. It could be a number that is made up with concrete resources. You know, they might be laid out with counters. It could be a number that is shown in words. So number encompasses lots of different ways that it can be shown. Numeral is about how it is actually written, and digit is from 0 to 9. We also hear a lot of people talking about sums, and this is one that you might hear parents saying, oh, they found their sums really hard. It's really important that when we talk about sums, that is for addition questions. So if you're asking children to complete a page, you know, maybe within a worksheet or within a textbook, you know, we try to avoid saying, oh, we're going off to do our sums, because if they involve subtraction questions, then that's not accurate. Depending on your kind of age and stage of teaching, you might have come through yourself using the term tens and units, but the language within the curriculum is tens and ones. And so again, it is important that we are using the correct mathematical vocabulary that is within our curriculum. And again, that's something that you might have to work with older learners. They may know it as units, and you're having to kind of emphasise the fact that units and ones means the same thing. Another common one that gets mixed up is the difference between biggest and largest. So if, for example, you were to write two numbers on the board, a 3 and a 7, and say which number is the biggest, children can often look at the one that is actually physically the biggest. And so when we talk about the size of a number in terms of quantity, we tend to use the word largest, so which is a larger number, rather than the word big, which they often relate to size. Again, there's a wee bit of a misconception around the words weight and mass. So one being more of something that we think about related to science and physics, and mass being linked to what we do in math. So when we are putting something on the scale and working out how heavy it is, that is the mass of the object. And this is, again, quite an unusual one because, you know, a lot of people are probably used to saying, oh, you know, let's weigh the flour, let's work out the weight of the flour. But actually, the weight of something can change depending on, you know, if you were measuring it on Earth or if you were measuring it in outer space. And so actually, when you are putting it on the scale and working it out, you're working out the mass of the object. And particularly if you're working with learners at second level, it's really important that you are using the term mass because they'll begin to look at weight and weighing things in newtons as they move into physics in secondary, and we don't want to cause that misconception by muddling up the terms. The other one that you'll hear, and again, this is one that secondary teachers are very clear that we get correct, is the difference between minus and negative. So when you're talking about subtraction and you're talking about negative numbers, making sure that we are, again, saying these correctly. So it's 6 minus 5, but we talk about the number -3 if it's the number below 0. And then another one, just to kind of make you aware of, is the difference between 3D objects and 2D shapes. So again, we quite often hear people talking about 3D shapes. And mathematically, if it's 3D, it's an object, and anything that's two-dimensional is a shape. So again, just some to be aware of. As we go through tonight, we will also talk about how we can think about setting up our environment to be numeracy-rich. So you'll often hear people talking about making things literacy-rich, but tonight we're thinking about actually how do we extend that into making things numeracy-rich. So on the screen there, we've got a quote from Realising the Ambition, which highlights the importance of maths permeating throughout your setting or throughout your classroom. So many of you might have something set up in your classroom which is a dedicated space for numeracy and maths, and maybe that's where the numeracy and maths resources are kept and stored. But we're going to talk over the next few slides about some of the ways that we can extend it beyond the maths area to embed it in everyday experiences. So this doesn't apply just for those of you working at early level, but right the way through. It's easy for us to say, but how do we actually do that? And that's what we're going to cover on the next couple of slides. On this slide, you'll see that there are some of the things to consider for your own classroom or setting about how to embed numeracy and maths. Now, I'm not going to read them all out to you, but you, as Jacqueline said, you will get access to these. So you can go around and have a think, are these appropriate? Do you have them within your setting? Good questions when you're setting up your environment to kind of keep in mind. And also, depending on the age and stage that you're currently working at, some of these might be more or less appropriate for you, depending on if you're working with younger learners or older learners. And you can see that we've also included some visuals of what these things might look like. So essentially, we're hoping that maths resources can be easily accessible, that children can use them throughout the classroom, so they're not having to ask permission to use a number line or to use counters, that actually they've got lots of opportunities to be able to access the resources and make the decisions about which ones are appropriate for them. And also thinking about kind of how you're displaying, how are you making maths interactive within your setting. We've talked a lot about how ensuring numeracy is embedded on the screen. These are just some of the different ways that you might do it. A lot of the things that you'll see here will be things that you probably do all the time as part of your day-to-day experiences within your classroom. So it's good to pause and think about what are some of the things that you do on a daily basis. So, you know, collecting the lunch choices, taking the register, counting your house points, and thinking about, well, how can you use those experiences that you're doing every day anyway to help learners use their math skills in real life ways. So you might be doing things like cooking and baking and sorting the recycling, sharing out snacks, calculating total for things like your house points or counting up trip money, all those kind of things. And so there's lots of opportunities that you'll be doing every day where you can help to embed numeracy skills in real life opportunities. So based on what you just heard, we're just going to pause for a moment. I want you just to picture your current setting. Now, for some of you, if you're a student, you might just be thinking about one you've seen on placement, but thinking about that setting that you are based in, what we've just talked about, are there things that contribute to a numeracy-rich setting? Is there something that you might like to change or add or make more of? So I'll give you a moment just to note down some of your ideas, and then I'm going to pass over to Maria.
Okay, I think we'll move on just so that we get through the rest of the content, but if you just continue in your head to think about that numeracy-rich environment, and please just, as I say, as Yvonne said, share anything in the chat. I can see some things coming through just now, which is great, so thank you for the suggestions that you're putting in the chat just now. So as I said, I'm going to move on. Yvonne mentioned earlier on the importance of the language that we use. So we thought it would be quite timely just to talk a wee bit on this slide about some of the phrases that you might either already be familiar with or you've heard people talking about but maybe not 100% sure in what the terminology means. So one of the phrases that we're going to start off talking about is CPA, and this stands for concrete, pictorial and abstract. It's not a new thing, although you'll hear about it a lot. It was developed initially as a way of scaffolding learning, because what was found was that going straight to the abstract or the unfamiliar nature of maths can be quite challenging for some children, and therefore some of the learning needs to be scaffolded by the use of math manipulative, concrete materials and effective representations. So very, very quickly, concrete is the doing stage. So during this stage, our learners should be using concrete objects. They should be using any natural materials that you've got access to, anything that the children can get access to where they can model out the problems. The concrete pictorial abstract approach brings these concepts to life because it allows the children to experience and handle the physical or concrete objects. So any abstract concepts that we are teaching should be first introduced using physical, interactive, concrete materials. So for example, and you'll see this more as you engage with the self-directed element of it, you'll see some examples of this, but very briefly, for example, if a problem involves apples, for example, we would be expecting the children to first handle the actual apples. Now from there they can progress on to handling counters or cubes which represent the apples, but it's about that progression of what that looks like for the learners. The pictorial stage is the seeing stage. So in this stage, we are looking for visual representations of any concrete objects that were used to model the problems initially. And this stage encourages the children to make the connection between the physical object, like the apples that they've just handled, and the abstract pictures or diagrams or models that represent the objects from the problem. Building or drawing a model makes it easier for children to grasp those quite difficult concepts. So we're thinking maybe fractions here. So just to sum that up, this stage helps the learners visualise abstract problems but makes them more accessible. The abstract is the symbolic stage. So this is where children use abstract symbols to represent problems, but learners will not progress on to this stage unless they've demonstrated that they have a solid understanding of the concrete and the pictorial stages of the problem. So the abstract stage would involve the practitioner introducing abstract concepts or mathematical symbols or formal algorithms without fully investigating the numbers or the language or the mathematical symbols. The one thing I would point out is that although you see the CPA and it looks like it's shown, and it is shown here in 3 discrete stages, kind of running from the concrete into the pictorial and then the abstract, what we're trying to promote is that practitioners will go back and forth between these stages to reinforce the concepts. And again, that will be very much dependent on what your learners are showing that they know and understand. We know that the CPA is used quite commonly down the school, so in the lower stages of the school, but maybe less used in the upper stages. But what we find is that learners who have gaps or some misconceptions in their knowledge, they might have been moved too quickly onto that abstract concept. So they might need to go back and explore the concept through a concrete approach and using those concrete materials, or using some of those visual representations again. Because what we're hoping is that that will allow them to demonstrate and get out of their head what's in their head, so that you can then best scaffold and provide that support and challenge that's needed. There are other terms that are on the screen here just now, but what I think we'll do is we won't go over them too much today, but we are going to pick up on some of them through the problem solving live session that we've got coming up. So we'll move on to the next slide, Jacqueline, if that's okay. Again, we're just going to pause very briefly here. We want you to consider the different concrete resources that you've got access to that you use quite regularly with your learners. So if you go to menti.com, and if you type in the code that's shown on the screen, or you can use the QR code, it will take you straight to it. We'll just pause maybe just for a minute or two for you to think about what are the concrete resources that you use regularly, which ones do the learners use. And again, I would be thinking at the back of my mind when I'm considering that, what benefits does this provide for you, and what benefits do you see having had experience using them with your learners? So be thinking about that as you're thinking about the resources that you use. And I'll just pause for a second. Can see lots coming in just now, which is good. Quite a variety again, which is good. Counters and Numicon, cubes and dice, which is great. I like tough tray idea. Great. And there's a mix there of some visual approaches as well. I can see number lines in there as well. Some whiteboards. So we've got those concrete materials, but also some people are mentioning the visual representation as well. Great. And again, when we're thinking about it, it's just about making sure that we are providing lots of different manipulatives and lots of opportunities for learners to demonstrate their current levels of understanding. But it also gives us as practitioners a chance to see what is it that's going on inside our learners' heads, because that's sometimes the most difficult part. And it allows us to question, to deepen, and to support understanding. It can make learning more accessible for learners. When we speak about that abstract notion, it can be quite challenging for some learners, and allows us to provide effective support and challenge. But also, using concrete materials, we can easily differentiate to suit our learners. Great. So we just move back onto the presentation now. Thanks, Jacqueline. You'll see here some of the things I've already spoke about. The manipulatives really do provide that bridge between the concrete and that abstract level of understanding. And if we move on to the next slide, we're just going to share with you briefly on this next slide some of the kind of most common and well-used concrete manipulatives. But again, some of these you'll be familiar with, others maybe not so much. It's worth having a wee chat when you go back to school with, some of the staff and find out where these are in the school. Are they hiding in some cupboard somewhere? You might have them in maths boxes or trolleys, or they might be in a central cupboard somewhere. So again, definitely worth a conversation with some people in the school. And don't worry if you're not familiar with all of these. As you go through the series of support and the self-directed element, you'll see how some of these resources can be used in different ways. It's important that learners see using concrete materials as an integral part of their numeracy and maths learning. You might find that older learners, I said this earlier, they may be not so keen to use the manipulatives because they might be seen as too babyish or too easy, but it's really important that all learners understand why they are used and can really see the benefits of it. Our secondary colleagues that we mentioned earlier on tell us that in secondary, they still use concrete materials to explore concepts right through to higher and advanced higher. So it's really important that we make sure all learners have the opportunity to use them to support their understanding. And then just finally on this slide, it's important that learners don't see certain manipulatives are only used for certain things. So for example, thinking that counters are only used for adding. And again, you'll see from the videos that Jacqueline spoke about earlier on, different ways that we can use the concrete materials for different concepts and how these can be used effectively. The next slide talks a wee bit, just again, quite briefly about some of the common pictorial representations. And again, depending on your experience, some of these might be new to you. Some of them I think you'll be using, like number lines came up there, you might be using these quite widely. So again, these pictorial representations, as we said earlier, act as a bridge between using the physical or the concrete resources, but seeing the problems written just in symbols in that abstract way. So again, examples include using a bar model approach, using number lines, using arrays to support multiplication and division, cherry diagrams to support that notion of part whole, but all of them should be used to support understanding. And in this slide, we wanted to share with you two sites which we use a lot and that were used quite commonly during the lockdown period. And these will give you access to a whole range of online manipulatives. So again, different ways that you can use these. You can share them with pupils to use and move around on an interactive board, or they can be accessed by pupils if they're lucky enough to have individual devices. You might also want to share them with families as part of home learning activities. These manipulatives can be useful in schools where maybe your resources are limited and maybe you don't have access to an abundance of physical resources or concrete materials, or that they are shared between lots of different classes. So they're really good if you want to use them with learners when you don't maybe have the concrete materials enough to share with your whole class. And the MathSpot link that you see there has got access to lots of different manipulatives, including some that you mentioned in the Menti, so the Cuisenaire rods, number frames, again, 10 frames, counters, a counting stick, there's an online Reckon Rec, there's a whole range of stuff there that you can access. Toy theatre that you see there as well is good for younger pupils or maybe learners who benefit from a more kind of simplified screen. On that website, there's a range of dice and timers, spinners, counting objects, coins, number frames, things that you can use in lots of different ways. And again, as you engage with the self-directed learning aspect that we spoke about earlier on, you'll experience lots of different ways that these manipulatives can be used. But they're two good websites to again add to your favourites if you're not already familiar with them. And I'm going to pass over now.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, we're in the home stretch now. We've not got too much more to go. Just a few more things we want to share with you, and then we'll just share all the various links and things that you need to have at the end as well. Okay, so songs, stories and rhymes are very powerful in sparking that curiosity and wonder in numeracy and maths, and that's not just at early level. There are loads and loads of books out there that have got a numeracy and maths focus within them, and sometimes ones that we've been using we didn't even realise that they could be used that way. And what we've done is we've included some of these on the screen, but there are loads and loads more. The Scottish Book Trust and also maththroughstories.com has loads of numeracy and maths related stories, and you can see the link to Maths Through Stories there as well. You can actually filter that website to whichever theme. Oh, sorry, I've gone moved. You can filter that theme, filter by theme, you can filter by age and all sorts, and there's books there for everyone. Some are better than others, and some of them have kind of lesson plans that go along with them as well. Also, a lot of the libraries will stock some of these books if you can't get hold of them in your own school or your own establishment. Okay, the next thing we want to show you is our main online numeracy and mathematics page. You do need to be logged into Glow to access this, unfortunately, and I know that some people do have an issue with that within their own local authority. From our point of view, every practitioner and every local authority has a Glow account. It's just sometimes the local authority makes it a little bit more difficult for people to access it. So if you don't have access to Glow, you have the right to access it, and it is probably worth chasing up with your own local authority to get your, and all university students, thanks everyone, chase up with your own local authority or your own university, find out who it is that's in charge of that, and you can get access to this because there's loads of good material. We do have the summary page on the National Improvement Hub, which we showed earlier on, and that's got loads in it, but this is more of our one-stop shop that kind of pulls everything together in a nice friendly way. So it looks like this. Yvonne's put the link in the chat. You can take a guided tour here, which will talk you through what it looks like. Our news items are on the right-hand side here. We update that every week or so. And what I would say is probably, again, save this page to your favourites and check in every now and then, because if we publish new materials or we get links to other external agencies that are looking to provide something, we make a link into that. So, for example, the Financial Schools website website is just an example of that. So have a look at that. There's good things to do. Key documents within this section, we've got the links to all the professional learning resources that we were talking about earlier on. There's recordings of them, although I wouldn't say jump to them just now because a lot of them will be within the modules that we'll be doing anyway, but you can link to the actual professional learning resources themselves there. And then we've got links to the usual benchmarks and all of that kind of documentation that we talked about earlier on. The other button, I'm going to show you a couple of buttons just now, the professional learning and research. There's some more videos in there. We've got effective questioning in mathematics. Again, you don't need to jump to that because we will cover that later on, but if you want to, you can. And some other professional learning that you can look at within there as well. Again, you've got plenty to begin on with, but if there's something that catches your attention, then that's great. This learning, teaching and assessment section is a section, has various different boxes. I'm not going to go through them all, but I do want to show you the pedagogical approaches because we think that you'll find this quite useful. Within that, we have a range of mini guides. Each of them are 2 to 3 pages long, and essentially it's just we take a key approach that people are using. So for example, bar models, I'll just show you this one now, and everyone follows the same format. What is it? Very short description, some examples, so what might it look like, some more examples there, and where can you find out more information if you want to find out a wee bit more about it. So you can see we've got various different themes that we've covered here, diagnostic questions, slow reveal graphs. You can go in and have a look at that in your own time, and we also have a button that you can suggest if there's something you think, I really don't know much about that, or it would be good if Education Scotland could provide more information about that. As long as it's not a commercial resource, then we can do something about that. So you can make a suggestion in there as well. And the other thing, which is on the next slide, I'm just going to click to, is the blended and remote learning. We put this up during the pandemic, but we found that aspects of it are still really helpful for people. You might remember that we had created a Scotland Learns newsletter that went out with, and if you don't worry, that had activities that could be used for parents, activities that could be used for teachers to send out or to be used remotely, various different things like that. So we still have these. We have just recently heard these might be moving to a different format or whatever, but we'll make sure that you've always got the link to this at the moment. And what we did is the activities that were created, and these are for all levels, have been organised and matched to each experience and outcome. And why we want to link to that is because sometimes when you're starting a new area, you're like, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do, and there are just some things and ideas in there that might just help get you started with it there. So you can go in, they're there for all levels, and you can have a wee look at them. Some you will like, some you will not like. That's absolutely fine. You just take what suits you and your learners best. The other thing is the virtual learning spaces. So similar to our actual modules that we've produced, we've got thing links for learners here, and we've only got them for first and second level, and they're very, learners can use them independently. They just go in, they click on them, and there's lots of different activities that they can do. They can just go in themselves, and there's different things they can do. So you can set that as homework tasks, early finishers, just whatever suits you really is absolutely fine as well. But it's just an extra tool in your toolkit, and I think we're always looking for just that extra bit of support. I'm not going to show any more about that just now because I think that's enough to go on with, but it's just so that you know that that's there, and there's lots of useful information in there. So done that, that's fine. Scotland Learn's done that as well. Parent Zone is also a very useful site. Maria mentioned the glossary earlier on, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore, but again, if you're going on to teach something you don't feel as confident with, then it's worth having a look at that as well. So we talked about the programme structure earlier on. So we've got the live webinars, we've got the self-led learning, and we also have the optional drop-in sessions. These are optional. You don't need to come to the full session. You can come in for a bit and leave, or you can just come along and listen. It might be that you want to ask questions about the programme or the content of the programme. It might be that you just want to talk to other people, and that's fine as well. You can come in, you can listen, you can leave. Again, whatever you want. It's very informal. We're not going to have presentations or anything like that ready for that. It's just a chat. So you can come along. There will be a Glow Teams space set up for that. Again, all information for that is in the welcome pack, so don't worry about that just now. And just know that that extra is there for you if you want it, but you don't need to use it if you don't want to. Maths Week Scotland is coming up. It starts next week. Some of you might have heard about it, some of you might not. Some of your own establishments will have lots of plans, but what we want to do is highlight the the Maths Week Scotland pack website. Sorry, there's loads within that. They've got lots of things that celebrate the fun, the enjoyment, and the importance of maths. There's packs on there available from early to second level, and actually those packs go back. There's one for this year, last year, and a few years previous. So there's loads of activities that you can dig out and try and use with your learners at early first and second level. And these can be used anytime, of course. They don't need to be used, just in Maths Week Scotland. If you want to use them again at other times, that's fine. Our email address is here. We'll put that again into the chat. If for some reason you have not received the slides, the recordings and the welcome pack within 2 weeks, so if you give us even if you give us to the end of September, and if you haven't received anything by, I think the 30th is the Friday, if you haven't received anything by then, email the mathematics box and we will make sure that you get it, because we can only go by the email addresses that we've got. So yeah, all presentations will be sent out, but it will be within, just give us to the 30th of September, just with things that are going on just now with Scottish Learning Festival and things. It's a very busy time for us, as you can imagine. One last Menti that we wanted to do, and I'll provide the thing link for you as well, is just this one here. So we've talked a lot tonight, but what we'd like you to do is think about one thing that you're excited about being a part of this programme, and just stick it into the Menti just now. And while you're doing that, I'll get the link to the thing link to you, which is here. Oh, no, wrong one, sorry. That one there. I'll post that into the chat so that everybody has access to this right away. And that's you. You can go away, but all the supporting documents will go around that as well. So, oh, too many windows open here. Just give you a moment to fill that in. Now, Yvonne, Maria and I will hang on for a wee bit, so if anybody's wanting to ask questions, you can ask. We can unmute you. You can just ask if you'd rather speak to us, or you can post in the chat and we'll try and go over everything with you. But please be reassured, this is not to add pressure, it's to help you. We want you to feel comfortable, and if at any point you don't feel comfortable, let us know and we'll do whatever we can to make sure that you do. And we really do appreciate you joining us, because we just want to spread the word about maths and how great it is and how great it can be. So thank you for coming along.
There were quite a few questions in the chat, Jacqueline, but I think